Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. So we just got some juicy new information for the Switch successor. I mean, we're talking about a potential reveal window and a targeted release date. That's the thing that everybody wants to know about. And this might fall in line with some of the things that we've been hearing online. So there is a reason to maybe believe that this could actually be more than just a simple rumor. So go and buckle up, Nintendo fans, because we got a lot to get into today. Now, something else that's been speculated online is the idea that console gaming will change drastically to the point that even PlayStation will eventually put their games on rival consoles. Now, to a small degree, we have seen Sony be a little bit more open to other platforms, but interestingly, PlayStation's former boss was asked about this exact situation, and his response was rather interesting. If you're new to the channel, though, do make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content just like this. I am here every Monday through Friday with daily gaming news updates. But let's just go and jump right into our first topic of the day, and that's about Nintendo. It looks like one of their 2025 games may have leaked a little bit early, or at least according to Nate the Hate. Now, Nate the Hate has a fairly decent reputation, so, this isn't just some random board member from Reddit or Family Boards, but as always, you should still take this information with a grain of salt until Nintendo themselves officially makes an announcement, if they ever do. Nonetheless, according to Nate, Nintendo is planning a remaster for Kirby Planet Robobot in 2025, and I'll go and say right away, this is a really good game. It's actually one of the better 3DS games, and debatably, it might be one of the best Kirby games ever made. So I think this would be a great choice for Nintendo to remaster if they actually do it. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be my first choice for a 3DS remaster. There are some other games that kind of comes to mind for me, like Kid Icarus Uprising. We absolutely need that one. Metroid Samus Returns would make a really good HD port, and even Zelda Link Between Worlds. But if this rumor proves to be true, I actually think there's a very good chance that all of those games will eventually get ported over. Similar to how Nintendo treated the Wii U Switch ports, it kind of seems like what they're doing now is they're focusing on the 3DS catalog of games. We just got Luigi's Mansion 2 earlier this year, and next year we have Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Switch as well. It does seem like that version is based off the 3DS game and not the Wii game, which by the way, that's why there's been talks about its graphics being possibly downgraded compared to the Wii edition. I believe that's because it's based on the 3DS version, which might not be as visually impressive, but it did have more content. However, it seems like Kirby Robobot could be the next 3DS port, which, hey, I think that's great. But my only thing here is the pricing. All of these games debuted at $40 for the 3DS. But Nintendo, being, Nintendo, seems to want these games to be $60 for the Switch. And I think that's where fans get a little bit annoyed by Nintendo. It just kind of feels a little bit maybe greedy from Nintendo to charge an extra $20 for an HD remaster. But even still, I am glad to see some 3DS ports because it really has a phenomenal and somewhat underrated library of games that a lot of people, unfortunately, missed out on. Now, we also have the Game Awards right around the corner. It goes live next week on December 12th, and even though I don't necessarily like how this event is usually handled, it's still a major showcase that typically has at least a few big announcements that are genuinely very exciting. And that's why a lot of people tune into the Game Awards showcase. We want to see those big announcements. And based on what we're hearing right now, this could be a very exciting year for those type of announcements. This comes from VGC's Andy Robinson, and he said expecting a very big Game Awards next week. Fire up the hype train. Now, somebody responded to him and asked if this was a guess or a hint, and he said it's definitely not a guess. Even more so, Tom Warren chimed in and said that he's also heard similar things as well. So I think at the very least here, we will get a few major announcements next week. At the same time, though, I still want to kind of temper expectations just because, honestly, this hype happens every single year, and a lot of people end up feeling burned when the Game Awards wraps up. I think that's more because the pacing than anything else, though. I mean, I've been saying it for years. These events don't need to be 3 hours long, and because they're so long, there's just gaps that are just boring for consumers to watch. But I do think that we will get some exciting announcements along the way. And in fact, just a few games that could potentially be here includes GTA 6. Its marketing should ramp up sometime soon, considering it's a 2025 title. Then there's Hazelight's next game, the It Takes Two studio. It just leaked that their next game is set for a March release, so an announcement should happen at any day now. Then there's Wukong. They've been teasing some kind of an announcement, maybe a PS5 Pro enhancement, or maybe even that long-awaited Xbox version. There's also been a lot of rumors that PlayStation might have some 30th anniversary reveals, and then there's Borderlands 4. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of potential for the Game Awards this year, so I'd say if anything else, let me know if you're excited about next week or not. All right, so let's go talk about these Nintendo leaks and what they potentially have planned for 2025. Again, this is coming from Nate the Hate, and he predicted that the Switch successor will be revealed in late January or possibly early February. Now, I don't really think that comes off as a shocker or anything like that. This is a fairly easy prediction to make. Nintendo themselves have already confirmed that a reveal will happen before the end of their fiscal year, which ends on March 31st. So we know that a reveal will happen within the first 12 weeks of 2025, but it's the release date that he heard that I think is a lot more interesting. Now, he emphasized that this is only industry chatter and it should be taken as such. So, don't take this as some kind of confirmation. However, there is another important detail that I'll get into in just a moment. But according to Nate, behind the scenes, there seems to be an expectation that the Switch 2 will release in May or June of next year. He even pointed out that Game Reactor leaked a very similar June release date. So multiple people are hearing that it could be May or June. And the reason that I think that this could potentially be true is because something else that happened just yesterday. See, it was also discovered that Foxconn just released their financial results, which is a manufacturing assembly that works with Nintendo. And apparently, in their financial results, they suggested that the Switch 2 has already started mass production. And if that's true, there's two things that could potentially mean. One is that Nintendo is trying to stockpile a large quantity of units to offset any kind of scalping. Now, there's already been rumors about that as is, but if they started mass production this early, this could lean into that thought process, which, hey, that would be amazing for actual consumers. But more so, this could also indicate that there's a short window between the Switch 2 announcement and its release date. So theoretically, we could get a January Switch 2 reveal and then have several months in preparation to actually buy it for a potential June release. Now, I think that would give Nintendo plenty of time to market it, and even more so, Nate also heard that Nintendo has a Switch 2 event planned for May. So that could be yet another opportunity for them to have a final blowout before its launch in June. Now, admittedly, some of this is just me speculating, and hey, maybe I'm just being a little wishful here. I want the Switch 2 just as much as everybody else. But I think there is a lot of information out there that seemingly makes a June launch at least possible. Yet, I'm not saying that it's 100% certainty, but it does seem like there is a possibility on the table. So give me your prediction in the comments below. When are you expecting a Switch successor launch? Let me hear your best prediction in the comments below. Now, let's go talk about PlayStation and this idea that they could release some of their games on other consoles in the future. There seems to be this growing idea from some people that the game industry is going to move away from console exclusivity in the future. And the former PlayStation boss, Sean Layden, was actually asked about this in a recent interview. So first, let's just kind of check out what he said here. Sean said, "I don't know what the business imperative would be to do that. With Xbox 360, we look at a global footprint, and PlayStation is far and away the global leader because it is the leading platform in 170 countries around the world. Microsoft never had that kind of global reach, so they could never build a global market to the scale that PlayStation does. So the question that you're asking, should PlayStation, with that huge market lead and the momentum apparently going forward, should they build versions of their games to run on a competing platform of much smaller size and scale? As the saying goes, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze." Now, interestingly, he was also asked about PlayStation games like Lego Horizon on Nintendo, and he didn't flat out dismiss that idea. Instead, he said, historically, PlayStation and Nintendo platforms have lived happily side by side in living rooms across the world. It's almost like a natural pairing. And I think what he means by that is that Sony doesn't necessarily view the rivalry between them and Nintendo in the same way that they do Xbox. A lot of PlayStation owners also own a Nintendo device because they are rivals, but they're still quite a bit different. Yes, Nintendo and PlayStation are still a rivalry at the end of the day, but Nintendo is still a very different type of console than what Sony has to offer, and because of that, Sony doesn't necessarily view them as the same type of threat to their console business. I mean, as we all kind of know, Nintendo likes to march to their own beat, and because of that, they've carved out their own unique audience, a very massive audience at that, whereas Xbox and PlayStation, they're fighting for a very like-minded group of gamers. They make very similar games as one another, and they have similar strategies pretty much across the board. Anytime Xbox does something, you can bet that there's a pretty good chance that Sony is also planning something similar, or vice versa. Now, I view that as a good thing because competition breeds excellence. But in Sony's mind, Xbox in every way is their opposition. They take their rivalry serious because they saw what happened going from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3. They painstakingly built this loyal fan base, and they were coming off of the most successful console ever made. Yet, just like that, things can change on a dime. So if they were to suddenly release their games on an Xbox platform, who's to say that fans won't take that as a betrayal and turn on their brand just like we saw during the PS360 generation? So in Sean Layden's mind, that's something that Sony heavily considers when it comes to these type of decisions. See, the thing is that yes, there are some positives to a multi-platform release because you can reach more customers that way. And games are a lot more expensive to make now. But when you're a console manufacturer like Sony and Xbox, they have to consider other things as well. You know, they have a lot of money tied into their console business that isn't necessarily linked to just how well their games are selling. They have things like their subscriptions, and they also get fees that they can get from third-party games that are sold on their platform. This is also one of the reasons that I've said in the past that Xbox won't just simply abandon their console business. There's just far too much money that's tied into their console business to simply leave. This isn't the days of the Sega Dreamcast. These companies are making a lot of money from just their subscriptions alone, and that's why they also won't completely abandon their exclusives either. They might not necessarily sell as many consoles as PlayStation, but they still have a sizable fan base that they're making a lot of money from. So by all means, it's still an important part of their business. But Xbox and PlayStation are, yes, in very different positions, and that's ultimately what Sean Layden is trying to convey. PlayStation is far ahead in console units sold, so they have a lot more leeway when it comes to exclusivity. However, I will say this much. If I were to make a prediction, I think we will see a noticeable shift in PlayStation strategy before we get to the eventual PlayStation 6. And I think we're already maybe seeing the early signs of that. PlayStation will likely increase their support for PC with shorter staggered releases as we continue forward. That's something that we're already seeing with some of their big-time exclusives. And the big potential addition to their strategy now is an expanded cloud game streaming. For as much heat as Xbox took for their "This is an Xbox" ad, I actually think there's a good chance that PlayStation is also working on a very similar strategy as we speak. As I said earlier, anytime Xbox does something, you can bet that PlayStation has at least thought about it. You know, they just released cloud gaming for the Portal as one such example, and I think there's a very good chance that their cloud game streaming service could expand even further to devices like Android and iOS. That way they can sell their subscriptions to people who aren't on PlayStation. So I think that's something that we could potentially see over the next few years, but let me know what you all think about all this. Do you agree with Sean Layden or not? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and peace out.